Welcome back to Talk Tickers. You know what we do here? We break down those earnings calls and give you the info you need as an investor.
That's right. And today we're taking a close look at BioNTech's fourth quarter and full year 2024 earnings call.
We want to figure out what's making this company tick right now and what we might expect moving forward.
First things first, let's hit those headline numbers.
Sounds good to me.
For the full year 2024, BioNTech pulled in total revenues of roughly 2.8 billion euros.
Okay.
And that actually landed right within their guidance. But they did end up with a net loss of 665 million euros for the year. Now, it's important to remember their cash position is still super solid.
Right.
Sitting at 17.4 billion euros at the end of 2024.
Yeah.
And that's even before factoring in the recent acquisition they made and a couple of settlement payments.
Okay.
If we just look at the fourth quarter of 2024, they brought in 1.2 billion euros in revenue and actually turned a net profit of 260 million euros.
So profitable fourth quarter, but a loss for the full year. Interesting. So what's their outlook for the coming year?
Their revenue guidance for the full year 2025 is currently sitting between 1.7 billion and 2.2 billion euros.
All right. So a profitable end to the year, but a loss overall. Because we need to dig into what went on during those 12 months. What were the major things that led to that net loss for the whole year, even with that huge cash pile?
The biggest factor was definitely the drop in demand for their COVID-19 vaccine.
Yeah, that makes sense. Things have calmed down quite a bit on that front.
It was expected, but it was still a big decline. And on top of that, their revenue took a hit from write-downs made by their partner, Pfizer.
Oh.
Then, if you look at their expenses, R&D costs jumped up significantly, ended up around 2.3 billion euros in 2024.
So where'd all that extra R&D money go?
A lot of it was because of the progress they're making with their oncology programs.
Makes sense. They've been talking a lot about their cancer research lately.
Yeah, their bispecific antibody, BNT327, that's a big focus area for them. And of course, selling general and administrative expenses went up too as they expand their commercial organization to handle their growing pipeline.
Gotcha. So more spending on developing new drugs and getting them ready for market.
Precisely.
You mentioned something about a negative figure under other operating results. What all falls under that category?
Yes. That mainly comes from the costs related to the disputes they've been having with the NIH and the University of Pennsylvania.
Contractual stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But the good news is those costs were partly balanced out by reimbursements they got through their collaboration with Pfizer.
Okay, so some give and take there.
Right.
Now, looking at their revenue forecast for 2025, it's definitely lower than what they brought in 2024. What's the thinking behind that projection?
Well, their guidance assumes things will basically stay pretty much the same when it comes to COVID-19 vaccination rates, pricing, and their share of the market.
So they're not expecting any big surprises there?
No big shakeups, no. They're also predicting that revenue will come in similar to how it did in 2024, with a good chunk of it coming towards the end of the year.
Okay.
Importantly, they're also taking into account the possibility of write-downs on their COVID-19 vaccine inventory.
That's prudent.
Oh, and that guidance also factors in projected revenue from their service business and the agreement they have with the German government for pandemic preparedness.
So a mix of factors all contributing to that projection.
That's right.
And on the expenses side for 2025, sounds like you're not pumping the brakes on investments at all.
Not one bit. R&D expenses are actually expected to climb even higher in 2025.
Wow.
They're laser focused on advancing those late-stage oncology programs we talked about.
BNT327, the mRNA cancer immunotherapies, the ADCs.
Yep, all of those.
They're really going all in on oncology.
They are. And naturally, with an anticipated launch of their first oncology product coming up, we'll likely see selling, general, and administrative expenses rise as well.
Of course. Got to gear up for that.
Oh, and they've also set aside capital expenditures for scaling up their manufacturing and building out their commercial IT systems to handle their growing portfolio.
So even though revenue might dip in the short term, they're making big moves to set themselves up for growth down the road.
That's the strategy.
Let's shift gears and talk about that oncology pipeline, which seems to be their main focus going forward.
Absolutely.
They keep mentioning these two big pan-tumor programs. Can you explain what that means for folks who might not be familiar with the term? And what are these programs all about?
Sure. So pan-tumor programs are essentially treatments designed to work against lots of different types of cancer.
Not just one specific kind.
Right. They're not limited to just one or two.
Interesting.
BioNTech's got two main platforms they're working with here.
Okay.
The first is their mRNA cancer immunotherapy platform.
Right.
This platform has two branches.
Two branches.
Yeah. There's the personalized approach called INEST, where they make a vaccine tailored to the specific mutations in a patient's tumor.
Very targeted.
Very. And then there's FIXVAC, their off-the-shelf approach, which goes after shared antigens found across many different cancer types.
Okay, so kind of a one-size-fits-all versus custom-made situation.
Kinda, yeah. The second key program is all about BNT327.
Which is?
It's a bispecific antibody.
And what's special about that?
Well, this type of antibody is engineered to latch onto two different targets at the same time.
Two targets. Interesting.
In this case, it's PD-L1 and VEGF.
Okay.
And this double targeting approach is meant to boost the anti-tumor immune response while also putting the brakes on blood vessel growth that feeds the tumor.
So it's hitting the cancer from two different angles.
Exactly.
Makes sense. Now, they made a pretty big move to advance BNT327 by acquiring Biotheus. What was the strategy behind that?
Acquiring Biotheus was key for BioNTech. It gives them complete control over BNT327, which they clearly see as a major player in their oncology future.
I see.
But it's not just about the drug itself.
What else do they get out of it?
This deal significantly beefs up BioNTech's operations in China.
China's a huge market.
Huge. They now have a solid clinical development team already in place there and their own network for manufacturing antibodies.
That's got to be a big advantage.
Absolutely. It should speed up their clinical trials overall and make decision-making in that market a lot smoother.
Now, they talked about developing BNT327 in waves. Can you break that down for us?
Think of it as a step-by-step process where they test BNT327 in different cancer types and treatment settings.
So a phased approach.
Yeah, exactly. The first wave is all about proving its effectiveness in areas where there's a real need for new treatments.
Makes sense. So what cancers are they focusing on in this first wave?
Lung cancer is a big one, both small cell and non-small cell lung cancer.
Right.
And triple-negative breast cancer as well.
Right.
They've already started a phase 3 trial for small cell lung cancer and a phase 23 trial for non-small cell lung cancer.
And the triple-negative breast cancer trial.
They're planning to kick off a phase 3 trial for that later this year.
So lots of activity in that first wave. What about the second wave?
The second wave is all about seeing how well BNT327 works when you combine it with their ADCs, their antibody drug conjugates.
Right. We talked about those earlier.
These ADCs target specific proteins on the surface of tumor cells.
Like TROP2, HER2, HER3, and B7H3.
You got it. And they've already started enrolling patients in a trial testing BNT327 with their TROP2 targeting ADC, which is called BNT325.
So testing it alone and in combination.
Yep. This way, they can see how BNT327 performs on its own and how it might work together with other targeted treatments.
Smart strategy. And we should be getting some key data on BNT327 pretty soon, right?
Yes, very soon. We're expecting big updates on BNT327 this month at the European Lung Cancer Congress.
Oh, wow. That's right on the corner.
They'll be presenting data on progression-free survival, which is how long a patient lives without their cancer getting worse.
Okay.
And we should get some early data on overall survival from their ongoing small cell lung cancer trials, too.
And that'll cover both patients who are getting it as a first-line treatment and those who have had other therapies already.
Exactly. This early data is going to be crucial for figuring out just how effective BNT327 can be in fighting this really tough disease.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit and talk about their personalized mRNA immunotherapy platform, INEST.
Right.
It sounds like they've honed in on a more specific direction for this platform.
That's right. Their INEST platform, where they develop those custom-made mRNA vaccines, is now mainly focused on the adjuvant setting.
Adjuvant setting. Remind me what that means again?
Adjuvant therapy is treatment given after the main treatment, like surgery, to prevent the cancer from coming back.
Oh, right, like preventative treatment. So they're trying to stop the cancer from returning.
Exactly. They've got phase 2 trials going on right now in colorectal cancer, pancreatic cancer, and bladder cancer, all using this adjuvant approach.
And when are we expecting to see some results from these trials?
We should get the initial data from their colorectal cancer trial late this year or early 2026.
Okay, we'll be watching for that. What prompted them to shift their focus to the adjuvant setting for INEST?
Well, they learned some things from their earlier trials.
Yeah.
Their phase 1 trials in patients with advanced solid tumors showed that INEST could trigger strong immune responses against the specific mutations in their tumors.
That's good, right?
It is. But the problem was, in these later stage settings, where patients often have a lot of cancer and have already gone through multiple treatments, the clinical benefit wasn't as pronounced as they had hoped.
So the immune response was there, but it wasn't enough to make a big difference clinically.
Right. And then they had a phase 2 trial in patients with metastatic melanoma who hadn't been treated before. The top-line results didn't hit the primary endpoint for progression-free survival. There was a trend towards better overall survival in the group that got the combination treatment, but it wasn't statistically significant.
I see.
What they've realized is that when the cancer is already very advanced and widespread, even a strong immune response from a personalized vaccine might not be enough to control the tumor quickly.
So they're focusing on an earlier stage now.
Exactly. The adjuvant setting is more promising because there are fewer cancer cells left after surgery, and the patient's immune system isn't as weakened.
So the vaccine might have a better chance of preventing the cancer from coming back.
That's the idea.
Okay, let's talk about their off-the-shelf mRNA immunotherapy, FIXVAC. How are things looking there?
FIXVAC is showing some good progress. They recently reported positive results from a phase 2 trial of their FIXVAC candidate, BNT111, in patients with melanoma that had either come back or wasn't responding to treatment.
Good news.
Yeah. We're expecting to see the detailed results from that trial and a full publication on their findings pretty soon.
All right, last thing on their oncology pipeline. What about their HER2 targeting antibody drug conjugate, BNT323? What's the latest there?
They're expecting to have the top-line data from a phase 2 trial later this year. It's a single-arm registrational trial testing BNT323 in patients with endometrial cancer that expresses HER2.
And what's the significance of that?
Well, the FDA has given it breakthrough therapy designation for this indication.
Breakthrough therapy designation.
Yeah.
That's a big deal, right?
It is. It means the FDA sees a lot of potential in this treatment. If the data from this trial is positive, it could clear the path for them to submit a biologics license application.
Which means they could get approval to market the drug.
Exactly.
Now, BioNTech isn't just about oncology. They still have a foothold in infectious diseases. What's their main focus there?
They're building on their success with the COVID-19 vaccine they developed with Pfizer. They still hold a major share of the global market.
So what's next for them in infectious diseases?
They're working on next-generation COVID-19 vaccines that could offer broader and longer-lasting protection.
Interesting.
They're also looking at combination vaccines that could target multiple respiratory illnesses at the same time.
Like what?
Think flu, RSV, and coronaviruses, all in one shot.
Wow, that would be a game changer.
It would.
All right, let's zoom out and look at the big picture for investors. What are the key takeaways from this earnings call?
This earnings call shows that BioNTech is making a serious transition. They're going from a company known for its COVID-19 vaccine to a multi-product company focused on commercializing cancer treatments.
A big shift.
It is. And their big investment in R&D, especially for those late-stage oncology programs, tells you they're in it for the long haul. They want to grow beyond their COVID-19 vaccine revenue.
They're not a one-hit wonder.
Definitely not. Buying Biotheus was a strategic move that gives them full control of BNT327 and a strong presence in the Chinese market. Investors should definitely be watching for the clinical trial results, especially the ones for BNT327 in lung cancer and their HER2 ADC, BNT323 in endometrial cancer. If those results are good, it could significantly boost the company's value.
So a lot of potential catalysts on the horizon.
Absolutely. They've also learned from their earlier trials and are now focusing their personalized mRNA immunotherapy platform on the adjuvant setting.
Right, trying to prevent cancer from returning.
Exactly. And one last thing for investors to keep in mind is that the competition in the bispecific antibody and ADC spaces is fierce and changing quickly. How BioNTech designs their trials, the combinations they test, and how their treatments stand out from the crowd will be crucial to their success in the long run.
It's a competitive market.
Very much so.
Okay, let's move on to our segment where we like to get a little creative. This is not financial advice.
Love this segment. Always fun to think outside the box.
Exactly. So, what's your outrageous but plausible trade idea for our listeners today?
Well, BioNTech is really betting big on ADCs.
Right, we talked about that.
And they're expecting that data readout for BNT323 in HER2 expressing endometrial cancer soon. Plus, it's got that breakthrough therapy designation from the FDA.
All good science.
So how about this? A pairs trade. Go long on BioNTech and short a company that's already big in gynecological cancers, but whose ADC pipeline for similar cancers is either behind BioNTech's or just doesn't look as promising.
Interesting. So you're basically betting that BioNTech will come out ahead in this specific area.
Exactly. If BNT 323 has good results in its trial, BioNTech's whole oncology pipeline could be seen as more valuable, especially its potential in solid tumors in women's cancers.
Makes sense.
On the other hand, if the competitor's ADC development runs into problems, the short position could protect you or even make you some money.
So it's a bet on the relative strength of their pipelines in this specific cancer type.
That's it. And it's a bet on a potential near-term catalyst for BioNTech in a market that desperately needs new treatments.
I like it. Outrageous, but plausible.
All
right, that wraps up our deep dive into BioNTech's latest earnings call.
Great discussion.
We covered their financials, the progress they're making in oncology and infectious diseases, and even threw in a thought-provoking trade idea.
Always fun.
Just remember, folks, this is not financial advice. Do your own research before making any investment decisions.
Absolutely.
We want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on BioNTech's strategy? Join the conversation and let us know. Until next time, thanks for listening to Talk Tickers.